When I use the phrase next generation trade agreement, it's really kind of acknowledging the fact that what we put into international trade agreements has changed since the end of World War II. The goal really for countries was to lower trade barriers, to make sure that the Great Depression or something like it doesn't happen again. And the idea there, which is really driven by the principle of comparative advantage, is that at least potentially it's possible for trade between countries to help both countries out. What we've seen especially since the 80s and particularly with the 1990s is a new agenda being kind of grafted onto this trade liberalization that goes much deeper into countries. And that kind of started the ball rolling to where we are today with the creation of next generation trade agreements, in which intellectual property itself is just seen as a kind of a natural part of these agreements. One of the things that's always fascinated me in thinking about public policy is the issue of framing. And I've always been intrigued by the idea about illicit drug use and how we think about that. The fact that we can frame it in two very separate ways, do we frame it as a health problem or do we frame it as primarily as an issue of crime? How the state defines that will lead to different conclusions. And when I'm looking at these next generation trade agreements, I see a lot of the same things. They're almost completely silent on the economic effects of the changes to intellectual property that these agreements all have in them. So then the question becomes, what are we missing by calling it free trade? You need a different way of looking at things. You got to use a different language. Otherwise, you'll tend to think that these agreements are mainly about products moving across borders, when that's important, of course, but there's also the knowledge aspect. And that is a fundamental change that I don't know if people fully appreciate. If we were able to get to the point where policymakers fully understood the importance of intellectual property rights, placed them on an appropriate level with respect to, say, traditional trade issues, it would allow us, at least as a country, to go into negotiations with other countries, say the United States, with our eyes wide open, with a full appreciation of the costs and benefits. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a good deal from them, but at least give you a chance at getting it, because you'll be aware of what the pros and cons are and how they can be balanced against other economic interests for the country.